Hello, I am Jinhoo from We Learn to Share, and in today's video, we are going to discuss about other elasticities, market equilibrium, and consumer and producer surplus. Let me show the screen. So let's begin. First of all, we are going to take a look at two types of other elasticities. The first one is income elasticity, and it is basically asking, will the quantity demanded drop or increase when there is a change in your income? So basically, are you going to buy more of this good or are you going to buy less of this good when your income increases or decreases? How to calculate it, you see like above. Divide the percent change in quantity demanded by the percent change in income. And if the calculated value is positive, it means that the good is normal good. While if the calculated value is negative, it means that the good is an inferior good. Well, how can you be so sure? I mean, like maybe the value can be negative, but the good can still be a normal good. But if you just take a closer look at this, you can understand why a negative value indicates an inferior good. Let's say the quantity demanded increased by 20% when the income dropped by 10%. So it is minus 10. I'll just erase the percent. And what will the value be? Simple. The value will be a minus 2. And so since the calculated value is negative, we can infer that this certain good or service is an inferior one. But why is it? It is because as the quantity demanded increased, the income decreased, or in other words, people bought more of the good or service when they had less income. And this is basically the definition of an inferior good, goods in which the demand increases when the income decreases. So yeah, that is why a negative value indicates an inferior good, because people will buy more of it when they have less income, or people will buy less of it when they have more income. The second type of elasticity, or actually the third type of elasticity, is the cross-price elasticity. And it is basically asking, are two goods a complement or are these substitutes? And if they are, then how closely related they are. So how to calculate it, you can see it above. You divide the percent change of quantity demand by the percent change in price of another good. And if the value is positive, it is a substitute. They are substitutes of each other. While if the value is negative, they are complements of each other. So let's just take a quick look. Look, hamburger, hot dog, these two are obvious substitutes. And let's just say that people bought 30% more hamburgers when the price of hot dogs increase by 10%. You calculate the value, you can see a 3. And since the value is positive, you can see that they two are substitutes. And to talk it in a more logical way, because the price of hot dogs increased, now people don't want to buy hot dogs as much as they used to do so before, so they look for other substitutes such as hamburgers, and that is why the quantity demand increases if the price of a substitute increases also, and that is why the value is positive. Let's look at the opposite, the complements. So what would be a nice complement? Okay, hamburgers and cola. These two are obvious complements of each other. And let's just say that as soon as the price of colas increased by 10%, suddenly people don't want as much of hamburgers as they used to before. And so the quantity demanded drops by 20%. In this case, the value is a minus 2. A negative value, so these two are complements and in which they are. So for a more logical explanation, if the price of a complement increases, it means that the people don't want the other complements also as they used to before, which means that they don't want to buy much hamburgers as they used to since the prices of colas went up, and now they can't eat hamburgers and colas together as much as they used to. So in this case, the calculated value will be negative, which means that the two goods are complements. So this was a brief explanation about other elasticities. Let's move on to the market equilibrium and consumer surplus and producer surplus. So this is a supply and demand graph in which you can see very often while throughout this AP Microeconomics course. And we are discussing about market equilibrium. the market equilibrium is the point in which the quantity demanded, any point above this demand graph, equals the quantity supplied, any point of the supply graph. And you can see an intersection. Yep. Here in this point, the quantity supplied equals the quantity demand. So in this case, this point is going to be the market equilibrium. And just draw a line down. This value of quantity is going to be the equilibrium quantity, in which means that everyone who wants it can have it, everyone who wants to sell it can sell it, with maximizing their surplus. But let's talk about it in a second first. And you can also infer that this point or this price is going to be the equilibrium price of this market. So why does this market equilibrium matter? It matters because this is the point in which the surplus is maximized. So what is surplus? I'm pretty sure that we have talked about it before, the additional satisfaction or whatever that consumers, producers, or anyone who participates in the market can get. So we are going to divide the surplus into two types: consumer surplus and the producer surplus, and examine it more closely in our next few slides. The first one is consumer surplus, which is basically the surplus the consumers receive. Too obvious. And this is the equilibrium price, this is the equilibrium quantity, and in this case, how much will be the consumer surplus? So this seems as a hard question since we have never talked about indicating surplus on a graph, but when you think about it a little more, the answer is going to just pop up into your brain. So you can infer that the consumer surplus is this amount of the graph. Why is it? The demand curve is not just a demand curve, and it isn't that simple. It indicates a richer meaning of it. The demand curve is expressing us that at this point, people are willing to purchase this quantity at this price, which means that if the price is at here, then the people who were already willing to purchase about this much quantity at this price now receive an additional satisfaction. I mean, like they would still be happy. They could have been happy already if the price was at here, because they are still willing to buy it. But now the price is even lower from their willingness to buy. So in this case, people at this point receive this much amount of additional satisfaction, or in other words, consumer surplus, and it applies the same to this point, 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 and more. People at any point in which their price is above the equilibrium price receive an additional satisfaction by purchasing this good at a cheaper price than their maximum willingness to purchase. And that is why the indicated region is the consumer surplus. This is basically all of how much people are willing to buy minus the actual price. I hope that you've understand it. We are going to take a better look after, and you will be able to understand it better if we even also look at the producer surplus. Then what is going to be the producer surplus of this graph? It is very simple, and it is the same to the consumer surplus, and I hope that you are correct. Yep, this region is the producer surplus. And why is it? The supply curve also indicates something other very interesting. The supply curve is actually the cost of producing, since producers aren't going to be willing to sell their products in any price that is lower than their cost. In other words, the supply curve in which, for example, at this price, producers are willing to supply this amount of quantity means that their cost of producing this much of quantity can be fulfilled if the price is at here, and it is the same to all the other points in the supply curve. So let's examine a specific point at here, and this is the price, equilibrium price. So this is the price in which the consumers are going to purchase at, and the producers producing cost is only at here, so they can only produce, they can produce at the cost of this. And now they check at the market, and then they find out that they can get an additional surplus, additional profit of this much, since they are already producing at a point way lower than the market equilibrium price. And it works the same to all these other points. They are receiving an additional satisfaction of this much, the difference between their cost and the market equilibrium price as their additional satisfaction. And so that is why the producer surplus is all the region at here. I hope that you understand it. Moving on. And so this is the final concept, very easy if you have understood it, the consumer surplus, producer surplus, and why they are consumer and producer surpluses. What is the total surplus? Simple. The total surplus is the consumer surplus plus the producer surplus, since that is the total amount of surplus that participants in a market, in other words, consumers and producers, have received. So thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to our channel. I hope that you've clearly understood the concept of other elasticities and surpluses, especially the part of a consumer and producer surplus. If you can't just get the concept right into your brain, then you can feel free to comment about any questions, any suggestions to my video. And thank you for watching. Have a nice day, and we will meet after 2 weeks about new concepts of AP Microeconomics.